Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inquirer Live at Gameday Central alongside Jeff McLane. I am Olivia Reiner. We are coming at you live from the Lincoln Financial Field press box, gearing up for a Christmas Day matchup between the Eagles and the Giants. Jeff, how you doing today?
Great. I'm thinking about the last time I was sitting in this seat on Christmas, and it was 2017, and the Eagles, I feel, were kind of playing similarly to the way they are now. That was a good team that already qualified for the playoffs, and after the Carson Wentz injury, you had Nick Foles, and everyone was concerned about the team, and they just had an unimpressive victory over the New York Giants, and they came here on Christmas night to play the then Oakland Raiders and snuck by them. Not impressively so, but that team, as we all know, went on to go win the Super Bowl. So, I guess keep your hopes up as the Eagles enter today's game against the Giants.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone, you can be a part of our conversation today, but we always love to hear from you. If you head on over to inquire.com/Eagles Gameday, you can leave us a question, a comment, whatever is on your heart about this team. We will address some of your questions and comments toward the end of our show today in a segment we call the Fan Zone. All right, Jeff, we have a lot of injuries and sort of things to just discuss to start off our show today. We do not yet have the inactives list, so once we do get that, we'll circle back to it. But let's talk about who we do know is not playing in today's game. Inside linebackers at Cunningham out for yet another game with a knee injury. We've got starting left guard Landon Dickerson. He is out after undergoing thumb surgery earlier this week. Cornerback Darius Slay underwent knee surgery earlier this week. He is out of today's game. And then cornerback Avonte Maddox, he has been on injured reserve after injuring his pectoral muscle in week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings. He has not been activated from injured reserve. His 21-day practice window opened earlier this week. So there's some notable names. Like I said, Nicholas Morrow, well, I did not mention this. Nicholas Morrow is currently questionable to play in today's game with an abdomen injury. We will find out in moments whether or not he is able to play in today's game. But given the fact that they are so thin, as they have been at inside linebacker, who do you expect to see play more or just play today in today's game?
Yeah, I mean, we know that Zach Cunningham is at least out, and he's been as far as I can tell, their best linebacker. So that has been an issue for them. And with Nicholas Morrow, I guess we'll find out any second now. He was warming up before on the field under the watchful eye of Ted Rath and Eagles GM Howie Roseman. If he can go, it'll be him, and it'll be Shaq Leonard, who the Eagles obviously added a few weeks ago. We've seen him play a little more the last few weeks because of injury. But if it's no Nicholas Morrow, we're going to see Ben Van Sumeren in that second off-ball linebacker role. And Ben has played some on special teams as an undrafted rookie that the Eagles were able to slide onto the practice squad for several weeks and then had to promote him to the 53. Then we all know that they let Christian Ellis, they didn't let him go. I think they tried to sneak him back onto the roster when they cut him briefly, and the Patriots picked him up. So they kind of may be paying the price for that a little bit now that you have two linebackers that are likely down with Morrow, questionable with an abdomen injury. But that's the linebacker situation. It has not been great all season. And certainly with, Saquon Barkley to test linebackers anytime he's got the ball in his hands, that could be an issue today.
The Eagles also elevated linebacker Brandon Smith from the practice squad, a Penn State alum, just as some added depth, some special teams contributions can be expected from him. But yes, we'll see, and we'll give you an update once we have it on Morrow's status for today's game. Let's talk about now Landon Dickerson. That's a big hole on the left side of the offensive line there. Last week, Cam Jurgens was out. Luckily for the Eagles this week, he is returning, so that's good news for them. However, now they've got another vacancy. Who should we expect to see start at left guard?
Yeah, my guess is that Sua Opeta, based upon what we saw during the individual drills this week in practice. It's either him or Tyler Steen at this point, but the fact that they chose Sua last week over Tyler suggests that maybe we'll see him at left guard. It's a little different going left to right, so maybe that's an issue for Sua, and they'd rather see Tyler Steen on that left side. Left tackle's where he played primarily in college. Maybe he's better there than he is on the right. But again, based upon what I saw in practice, I think it's going to be Sua Opeta, and we'll find out very shortly here what will happen at that position. But look, this is a position. The guard position has been the main one that they've had issues with in terms of injuries. With Cam Jurgens being out a few times this season, and now all of a sudden Landon Dickerson, last year a Pro Bowler, not in the lineup today.
So we've got some breaking news. The inactives list is out, and inside linebacker Nicholas Morrow is inactive, so he will not be playing in today's game. And as we already mentioned, we can now expect to see Ben Van Sumeren, an undrafted 2023 free agent who signed with the Eagles in the offseason. He had a pretty impressive performance in the preseason. I think he racked up something like 17 tackles. So perhaps we'll get to see a little bit more of him in today's game with Morrow not playing. Other than that, really no surprises on the inactives list. Running back Rashad Penny is inactive yet again. Tight end Alberto Quabenam is also inactive, and then pretty much everyone else, as we've already discussed, is out of today's game. As we already mentioned, Cam Jurgens will be playing. He's making his return at right guard. Wide receiver Devontae Smith missed a couple of practices earlier this week with an injury he sustained against the Seattle Seahawks. He is active and he will be playing in today's game, so that is good news for the Eagles wide receivers core. As far as the Giants are concerned, their inactives list, I have not seen it yet. That being said, we already know that right tackle Evan Neal will not be playing. He's actually been placed on injured reserve with an ankle injury. And Tyree Phillips, former Eagle, is the backup at right tackle, so we are expecting to see him start there. And then as far as their kicker is concerned, the Giants have been dealing with quite a few injuries in that department. They have elevated kicker Mason Crosby from the practice squad. Former Packers, great, as the Giants kind of deal with injuries there. So expect to see him kicking for the Giants. All right, let's transition into our latest headlines segment. Jeff, the Eagles are looking to get well after 3 straight brutal losses. They've already punched a ticket to the playoffs. However, now they're just trying to improve their seeding. They've got 3 should be more relatively easy opponents they're going up against in these final 3 games. The Giants today, the Arizona Cardinals next week, and then they're heading to go visit the Giants the following week. Aside from a few wins, what do the Eagles need to show in order to just instill some confidence in the public getting set for the playoffs?
Right, certainly instill some public in them. Some confidence in them, because look, I think that's been an issue that we've seen these last 3 weeks, and really honestly all season. It's just that they haven't been playing at the level they know they're capable of playing, considering the talent that they have, and consider about how well they played last year and reaching the Super Bowl. And these 3 games could give them a little more bounce in their step heading into the postseason. Yes, they're not impressive opponents that they're playing, but this is still the NFL. The any given Sunday adage always applies, and it's really not so much if they win, it's how they win. And I think not only so much about how they win. Yes, you blow them out, that's great, but I think fans here are smart enough to know when the Eagles are playing well, when the offense is moving the way it needs to move with explosive plays, chunk yardage plays that we've seen from this offense so much the last few years. And then the defensive side of the ball, that pass rush, getting after the quarterback, getting off the field on third downs. That's something that obviously this team last year did a lot of, setting a franchise record for the number of sacks that they had and having really good situational numbers that they had all the way up until the Super Bowl. So I think that's what they really need to see. If you're looking more specifically about offensively, I think it's Jalen Hurts. You want to see him a little more comfortable back there in the pocket, looking off his first reads, getting to the second reads if he has to. The run game, I thought it was a little more productive last week. We saw them establish the QB+1 game, and I thought that was a very good development for this offense, because if Jalen gets going on the ground, and from what I understand, the knee is pretty much healed at this point. If he gets going on the ground, that really opens things up for the rest of the running backs, DeAndre Swift, before you get to contact. And if you can get that going, and I'm not a big run the ball type of guy, but I think at this point they need to kind of dial it back a little bit, because the offense has struggled so much, and get their own game going to open things up for them in the pass game. You can do so against teams like this, the Giants obviously today, Cardinals next week, and then again the Giants in the finale.
And now they're going into their second game with Matt Patricia at the helm as the play caller. Last week, they finally were able to hold a team to 20 yards in the Seattle Seahawks after the previous 2 weeks of giving up much more points. That being said, they still gave up 92 yards on the Seahawks' final game-winning touchdown drive. Quarterback James Bradbury was picked on for the majority of it. But we did get to see a little bit more of maybe a youth movement, especially in the secondary. Got to see some more of cornerback Keely Ringo, safety Sidney Brown, even cornerback Eli Ricks really got his first real snaps on the outside after spending much of this season in the slot, which is not his natural position. with all of what we saw in mind last week, how do you expect Patricia to utilize his personnel going into today's game in his second game going up against the Giants today?
Yeah. Look, Darius Slay's out. He's probably going to be out for the rest of the season, so that gives the league an opportunity to look at the young guys like they did last week. Keely Ringo started, but Eli Ricks, as you mentioned, pretty much split the reps with him on the outside. Sidney Brown played almost as many snaps as he's played percentage-wise this season in that kind of quasi linebacker safety role. They really bounced him around a bunch of different spots. They all had their ups and downs. I'd say Ringo and Ricks had more ups than downs, and Sidney Brown probably had more downs than ups. But you're going to have to kind of have a little patience with these young guys over these next few weeks. There's been some suggestion out there, and maybe I'm part of that crew, about maybe James Bowery playing a little less to him, considering how much he struggled over the whole season. But certainly last week was a bad one. But I think, look, I mean, you want to get his confidence up as well. I think when you get to the postseason experience and having veteran composure out there is important. So I just don't see them burying Bradbury. As for Matt Patricia, yeah, this is his second game as a coordinator, de facto coordinator, since they demoted Sean Desai. There's been talk about aggression, and maybe I think you saw that in the secondary. They weren't playing as many too high safety looks. You saw quarters, which is split safety looks, but more man, maybe having guys play a little closer to the line in the box. But he didn't blitz much. I mean, he's never really historically much of a blitzer. So I don't think that's going to be a big part of what we see from Matt Patricia over these final three games. But I think they want to tighten things up, especially on third down. Maybe send certain pressures. Simulated pressures is really what he's done more of in his career. And that we don't have to take from the back end, right? If you can rush with 4 and get to the quarterback, heck, you do it, because that way you can keep 7, and it becomes a numbers game. And I think that's what you want. That's what you want out of your defense. And I think that's what the Eagles are trying to get out of Matt Patricia now that he's calling plays.
All right, well, we'll see exactly how Matt Patricia and how aggressive he is in today's game. Let's talk a little bit about Eagles offense too. Jeff, you already kind of hit on this, but the run game was a little bit, I would say, improved, especially with the quarterback Jalen Hurts having a season high 82 rushing yards, and that, I mean, is really what his bread and butter has been for not this season, but in his career. Is just his run threat and his ability to do. He calls himself a triple threat. His ability to run, pass, and use his mind out there on the field. And we got to see a little bit more of that running aspect last week. And that also kind of opened things up for DeAndre Swift too. He had 74 rushing yards, which was his most in 3 weeks. So to see the Eagles run game getting going, you already mentioned just kind of how this Giants run defense is not exactly strong. But that all said, how do you expect them to kind of just balance the run and the pass, especially given the fact that we know that this offense, as Nick Sirianni likes to say, runs through A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert?
Look, I think it's important that they do that you go through your top 3 guns. But, I mean, we've seen the Eagles completely ignore their third receivers. They've completely ignored their second and third tight ends. And I'm not saying that, Jack Stoll needs a lot of targets, or that Julio Jones or Quez Watkins, clearly, whenever the ball seems to be thrown to him, the worst thing can possibly happen. But if you want to open things up for these other guys, you got to go there every now and then. I think some of that falls on Jalen. He has done a great job of working off his first or second read and going to those other guys in kind of check down situations. Look, you want to be explosive. As we mentioned before, they need chunk yards, so they got to go to those receivers in those situations. But there's an opportunity to get the ball into those other players' hands and then to open things up for the other guys in the offense. So I think that's how you're going to have to balance things off, balance things out offensively for this offense. Look, there's a lot that's going on with this team. I detailed some of it in my latest podcast, Uncovering the Birds, that explains the regression of this team, not only just in these 3 games, I think in the entire season. That's why you heard so many fans, even when they went 10-1, that they were concerned about the bigger picture. And look, I get that. Expectations are high for this team. I guess the only way that they can improve upon last year is win the Super Bowl. But they do have some time to right the ship here, not only with the 3 games, but time before the playoffs to reset, reload things, to kind of tighten things up, focus on specific types of players, specific players that you want to feature in the offense. Get things tuned in terms of how you're going to approach whatever teams you may face in those first 2 rounds. I mean, they really control their destiny in the NFC East. I think they still control they still have a good chance of winning that number 2 seed, with Detroit playing at the Cowboys next week. So look, it's not all doom and gloom. I get, I know that podcast maybe painted that sort of picture, but it was, I thought, a clear-eyed look of what's particularly distressing this team, and that's at the defensive coordinator position. Obviously, they made a switch there. Offensively, with Jalen Hurts not quite playing at the level that they need him to play, but also with Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson, and how they have been utilizing Jalen and not doing so effectively at times. And, of course, lastly, GM Howie Roseman and some of the personnel moves he made this offseason.
Certainly worth listening to Jeff's podcast. If you haven't already, you can head on over to inquire.com/Eagles Gameday. We've got a bunch of links over there. You can check that out. All right, let's transition into my favorite part of our show, the Fan Zone. We get to chat with all of you. And just as a reminder, as I already mentioned, inquire.com/Eagles Gameday. Not only can you check out some of our stories that are over there right now, but you can also leave us a question, a comment, and we'll try to get to some of those at some point today. So let's start with this comment here from Ben Nerick. They say, just get off the field on 3rd and long. So the Eagles stats on 3rd down in particular are, to sugarcoat it, pretty dismal this season. They are last in the league when it comes to opponent 3rd down conversion at 47.7%. And then if you just look specifically at 3rd down between like 6 and 10 yards or so, it's 46.97%. So not great. Jeff, what is the first step to just trying to rectify some of these issues on 3rd down?
I mean, they got to get a quarterback, right? You got to find ways to take that quarterback off his first read. So I think that's the key, knowing where they want to go in that situation. So as long as you can get him having to pump, that gives the pass rush a little additional time, because if the ball's coming out quick, there's nothing the 4-man rush can do. If you blitz and send extra rushers, there's really nothing they can do. So it's knowing where the ball is going first and doing your best to take that away. And then I think that opens it up for the rest of the defense to make plays and to keep the offense from the opposing offense from moving and converting those 3rd downs, because that's what we saw in that last drive. I mean, the 3rd down defense wasn't bad against Seattle, but on 2 3rd and 10s, go right at James Bradbury, plenty of time. He was the first read there. DK Metcalf caught a long pass, and then, of course, in the fateful 3rd and 10, again, right back at James Bradbury for the game touchdown.
We'll see if the Eagles are able to at least build or try to create some momentum when it comes to 3rd down, as they had earlier in the Seattle Seahawks game. Thank you very much for your comment. Let's go over to IW1699. They say that they would just like the Birds to force a turnover once in a while. The Eagles defense has forced 15 turnovers this season, which ranks 25th in the league. So not great, but also not as bad as the 3rd down conversion percentage. That said, is it just a matter of fundamentals? What is holding the Birds back right now from forcing more turnovers?
Yeah, as you know, Olivia, I mean, turnovers can be fluky, so sometimes you don't want to put a lot of stock in them. But I think at this point in the season, there's a reason why they're not getting as many turnovers as they got last year. They only have 6 interceptions. And one player, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, had as many in the first 9 weeks of last season. So that tells you how dire it is in terms of getting interceptions that way. So be around the ball, get your hand on the ball. Sometimes it helps to play more zone than man in terms of seeing the ball. It makes it a little easier to get those types of interceptions. But if you're playing man, get your hands up, deflect the ball. That in turn can cause turnovers. And then obviously forcing fumbles. And that's, we've seen the Eagles actually have their issues with fumbles. The Eagles work so much on ball security, and they work as much on punching the ball loose. You'd like to see guys be a little more aggressive in that regard, but sometimes it's just fluky. Sometimes it's not, things are going well, it goes your way. When things aren't going well, it doesn't go your way. And you look at the Giants, conversely, one of the things that they do well actually is force turnovers. They have 22 this year. So something to keep an eye on today as well.
For sure. Thank you very much, IW1699, for your comment. Let's take this final question/comment here from Sal DeMarco, 730. They say, shut the run game down and put the heat on Tommy Cutlets, a.k.a. quarterback Tommy DeVito. And this game against the Giants should be the Eagles. Are those the 2 biggest concerns you think, Jeff, in the Eagles' mind right now as they get set for this game?
I guess Saquon Barkley is the one guy that you circle If you're playing the Giants, he's maybe not quite as explosive as he was in his first few years before he started having those injuries. But if you're looking about explosive plays, Saquon can do it. He still can do it on the ground. He can still do it in the air. I mean, Down Waller's back at tight end, so I think he'd probably be their number 2 option. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Giants do something to get him started. Easy passes, roll out, naked bootlegs, just to kind of get in his hand and let him do what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch. But yeah, and I guess with Tommy Cutlets, he can run the ball a little bit, so you have to be careful about him in the design run game for quarterbacks, but also when he scrambles with the ball. I mean, and we've seen a few times when the Eagles have had actually issues containing quarterbacks, so that's something I'd watch as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, Sal, thank you very much for your comment, and thank all of you for your thoughtful questions and comments. Merry Christmas if you're celebrating. We've got Jane Roberts over on Facebook watching in Florida. Hope you are enjoying the Florida weather. And it's actually not so bad here today, but hopefully it's a lot warmer down there in Florida. All right, let's transition into my second favorite segment of our show, our prediction segment. Jeff, it's time to look into the future. What is your first, actually, we'll pull the reins back a little bit. Before I want you to give your final prediction, what matchup are you going to be keeping an eye on in today's game?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dexter Lawrence versus Jason Kelsey. This was, a heavyweight fight last year in the playoffs, and Lawrence was one of the few players on the Giants to show up that game, and he's a big boy. I mean, that's historically where Jason has struggled against those big nose tackles that get over him. And when there's a weight difference, as there is in this case, I'd say like 30, 40 pounds, it's a tough matchup for him, and he can get pushed back occasionally. And Dexter Lawrence is one of the best in the NFL at doing that. He's not quite 100% from what I understand, so I don't think he's going to play as many snaps as he normally does. But I think that's always a matchup you got to keep an eye on when it's Jason Kelsey, one of the best centers in the league, who can have success against those big guys. No one knows how to play the leverage game more than Jason Kelsey, but Dexter Lawrence, he's one of the few guys on the defensive side of the ball that can really blow things up for this Eagles offense.
All right, well, we've talked about some of the struggles that the Giants have had this season, particularly defensively, but really their offense too, although I think Tommy DeVito has helped rectify some of those things. What is your final prediction for today's game?
Yeah, you know what? The Giants aren't a very good team. I keep finding, you always look at it from various points of views. And, as I said, in the NFL, anything can happen on any given Sunday, as we know. And the Giants haven't beaten the Eagles in a long time, right? They haven't beaten them here since 2013. That's 10 years. No, look, at this point, this team is way different than the teams that have competed against each other in this rivalry. So I don't want to put too much stock in that. This is, look at this game for what it is. But, it's the Giants offensively just don't have much firepower. And if they can't even hold the ball for a decent amount of time, I just think that plays right into what the Eagles want to do. And that hurts their defense, because the Giants defense isn't bad. It's just that they have such a horrible offense that has them on the field so often. So, I mean, there's a chance that the Giants defense, Wink Martindale's a very good defensive coordinator. He loves the blitz a lot. I don't know if that's the way I'd play Jalen Hurts, because it seems like the mush rush and playing deep safeties has been the way to contain him these last few weeks. But that's an opportunity for the Eagles, and I think they're going to take advantage of it. I really think that we're going to see the return of the explosiveness of this offense against this team. And I have them winning comfortably, 30-13, and kind of getting the ship right a little bit as they head into the final 2 games of the season.
All right, that is a pretty comfortable win there for the Eagles. I have got a somewhat similar score, but not quite as big of a margin there. I've got 28-14 Eagles victory. I do think that this can be a get-well game for the Eagles, although I guess my final score is not so much of a bullying showcase for the Eagles, but certainly they have not surpassed. I mean, they haven't even hit 20 points in their last 3 games, so 28 points would be a massive improvement for them if they are able to do that. I don't really expect a ton to change in terms of just like what we've been seeing from this offense necessarily, but I feel like going up against this Giants defense, I think that the Eagles will still be able just to do what they do and get well, and that the Giants aren't going to pose as much of an issue as a collective unit. They still have some playmakers, as we already mentioned. Dexter Lawrence is their best defensive player by far, but I still think the Eagles on paper have the talent to overcome this Giants defense for sure. So 28-14, Eagles win, but we'll see exactly what happens. All right, let's transition into our player picks. We've discussed a whole lot of players, a whole lot of matchups to watch in today's game, but who is one player that you're going to be keeping an eye on in today's game?
Yeah, I'm going with Eagles wide receiver AJ Brown, who hasn't really been the AJ Brown that we saw through the first maybe 8-9 weeks of the season. He's had some moments here and there, but I think obviously with the offense struggling, that affects your number one receiver. And earlier in the year, those jump balls to AJ and one-on-one situations seem to be all falling the Eagles' way, and it just hasn't as much recently. I think sometimes Jalen Hurts is forcing the ball in those situations, and then maybe AJ, given the circumstances, isn't coming down with the ball like he has in the past. But look, this guy's a dog. He can get it done as well as Devontae Smith in the air. And I think, look, you don't want to have Jalen pressing that too much. I think that's been an issue clearly for the team over the last month or so. But I think there'll be opportunities against the secondary for AJ to have passes thrown to him downfield in one-on-one situations, and he's going to win a few of them today.
I think AJ Brown is a pretty safe bet for you, Jeff, in terms of your player to watch. I am going to be a little bit of a cop out here, and I'm pretty sure EJ picked this position group or just kind of general group of players last week, but I am going with the Eagles pass rush for today's game. Josh Sweat is looking for his first sack since week 9 against the Dallas Cowboys, so he is dealing with a little bit of a drought. He's got 6.5 sacks this season. Hassan Reddick leads the team with 11. The reason why I'm picking the pass rush is that Tommy DeVito, on the 89 dropbacks that he has faced this season, in which he's been pressured, he has been sacked 35 times, which is 39.3% of his dropbacks. So that is according to Pro Football Focus, and that is the most among qualifying quarterbacks. And it's a pretty staggering number there. So I think if the Eagles are able to put some pressure on this offensive line in particular, which is not a very good offensive line, then they should have some success. We've been waiting to see the Eagles pass rush wreck a game, impact a game, and I think this could be the game that they're able to do that. If not, then their woes will continue. So as a group, keeping an eye today on the Eagles pass rush. All right, Jeff, before we wrap things up, anything else that you feel like is on your mind for today's game?
I think you raised a good point there with the pass rush. I didn't realize DeVito gets pressured that much, but that Giants offensive line historically has not been very good, and it's the same thing again. Andrew Thomas on the left tackle is not too bad, but as you mentioned, Evan Neal is going to be there, and the interior of that line, I think it's where the Eagles can really make their hay. Jalen Carter, I know he's been struggling here in the last half of the season, but he had some really good rushes last week. Fletcher Cox has been playing solid as well. Opportunities for Jordan Davis and Milton Williams as well to get to the quarterback, push the pocket, and I think the Eagles should do well in terms of their defense versus the Giants' offense.
All right. Well, everybody, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Inquire Live at Gameday Central. The party is not over. You can stick around over on inquire.com/Eagles Gameday. You can follow along with us throughout the game as we post and comment in real time. So we look forward to seeing you there. And you can also stay up to date on all of our Inquire sports coverage by subscribing to our Sports Daily newsletter. You'll see our most recent articles along with other Phillies, Sixers, and college sports coverage. A lot of the articles referenced throughout the segment will be over there.
Yeah, and please give my Uncovering the Birds podcast a listen. We just dropped an episode, as I mentioned earlier, on the current state of the team. We have a backlog of episodes that if you haven't listened to, we'd love for you to jump aboard and hear this narrative series that we've been working on starting in the offseason, but have now been a part of the team this season. So listen to it wherever you hear podcasts, or go to inquire.com/podcasts.
All right, everybody. Thanks again so much for tuning in to Gameday Central. We'll see you next time.